14 years after the murder of Ellen Greenberg, and a couple weeks after the Hulu documentary comes out. And listen, I'm not saying that he is a suspect, her fiance, her ex-fiance, of course, Sam Goldberg, but come on. Come on. He is featured in this Daily Mail exclusive article. Ellen Greenberg's ex, Sam Goldberg, breaks his silence after a court hearing rules her 20 stab wound death was suicide. Remember, I just talked about this yesterday. I'll put it in a playlist here, but I'm sure he's real happy because I think this was the plan all along. This is just my feelings. I'm really pissed off about this case, you guys. Let's get into this article. It says Ellen Greenberg's ex-fiance has broken his silence after the city of Philadelphia doubled down on its controversial ruling that her death from 20 stab wounds was a suicide. He told the Daily Mail, "Things suck. I'm sure they suck for you because you're married and you've moved on with your beautiful life in New York City with your wife and your kids. Well, Ellen Greenberg's parents are just left with no kids because they only had one, and she was left to die on the kitchen floor to 20 stab wounds and multiple bruises that I don't believe were self-inflicted." That's what I think. He said that things have been awful because of the widespread media attention. Yeah, I'm sure. FAFO sucks, right? Around the 27-year-old school teacher's shocking 2011 death. They asked him, who's now a father of 2 living in Manhattan, if he felt he had been screwed over by the Hulu documentary exploring her final days. He goes, "Yeah, I've been. It's awful and it sucks, but I have nothing else to say." I don't know about that. I feel like you kind of have a lot to say. He says that his comments mark only the second time he has ever spoken out publicly about his former fiance's death. He spoke to CNN in the fall of 2024 when he insisted Greenberg died by suicide and blasted the lies, the distortions, and the falsehoods about him over the years, because that's what you do. You blame the other person. If you guys don't know this case, it is so maddening, and you have to this is just, go watch the Hulu documentary. But there's also great people on YouTube that have been covering this. I can list them all. I'm now taking this on my show. It is really unbelievable what happened. The documentary doesn't even cover it all, but the cover-up after the crime is what's upsetting, and it's because of Sam Goldberg's family's connections. This is corrupt. This is political. This is like high-powered people, and it's giving Canton. It's giving Karen Reed vibes. It's giving all of that. I'm just going to be honest. The article continues. He says, "When Ellen took her own life, it left me bewildered. She was a wonderful and a kind person who had everything to live for," he said at the time. This is a picture of him today, or this week. He continues, "When she died, a part of me died with her. Unimaginably, in the years that have passed, I've had to endure the unimaginable passing of my future wife and the pathetic and despicable attempts to desecrate my reputation and her privacy by creating a narrative that embraces lies, distortions, and falsehoods in order to avoid the truth. Mental illness is very real and has many victims." We're going to get into that in just a bit in this article, but he's trying to basically say that she ended her own life because she had anxiety. She was taking Zoloft, I believe, at the time, and she was seeing a therapist for anxiety. But he's not mentioning the fact that she had 59 bruises on her body from various stages, meaning they weren't all done on that night. He continues, "I hope and pray that you never lose someone you love like I did to a terrible disease and then be accused by ignorant and misinformed people of causing her death." I guess that would be people like us. Listen, all of this is allegedly, because there's a lot of missing pieces in this story. This article gets into it too. But a little more on his remarks. It says that Daily Mail approached him outside of his luxury. Remember, he's a very wealthy guy, apartment building in Gramercy Park where he lives with his family. They bought this home for almost $2 million. He's dressed in a baseball cap and casual wear. He initially remained silent and rushed back inside the lobby of the building before jumping into his car. On his return, he gave his brief comments. This is just after the Philadelphia chief medical examiner, Lindsay Simon, released the findings of a re-investigation of the death. This is 14 years after the first investigation. Remember, in the first investigation, they ruled it as a suicide and then a homicide and then back to a suicide after speaking to the police department. She double down and reaffirm the city's stance that she died by suicide, even though Greenberg was found dead on January 26, 2011, in the sixth floor apartment that she shared with Sam in the quiet, safe neighborhood of Manayunk, Philadelphia. He had told police that he went to the gym around 4:45 and returned about 30 minutes later. There were cameras in the hallways, in the public hallways, but not in their personal sixth floor hallway. So there's a little bit of a time issue. You don't actually see the part of the story where he's saying he tried desperately to get into the door and broke into the door. Now, when he called 911, he said she stabbed herself. Moments later, he then said she fell on a knife. Greenberg had been stabbed 20 times, including 10 times on the back of her neck, and her body was covered in bruises. A 10-inch kitchen knife was sticking out of her chest, okay? Despite the nature of the wounds, the death was ruled a suicide. Now, listen, I'm not someone, knock on wood, that I've ever had to experience feeling like I wanted to take my own life, but I just having done research, I feel like if you do want to do that, you want it to be fast and painless. You want it to go fast. That is not how you do it, from what I've read. Okay. Now, meanwhile, her amazing parents, Sandy and Josh, have fought for 14 years against the ruling, with numerous experts, pathologists, and investigators finding evidence that has contradicted this conclusion. They have hired outside examiners who have said these are not self-inflicted wounds. But he never joined the parents in the fight. See, he was fine with the suicide ruling. He was like, okay, suicide, good, cool. Moving on with my life. Isn't that weird? See, I always thought it was kind of weird when he came into the house and he was like, wait, she looks like she was killed. And then he never was like, is there a murderer in my apartment? He immediately was like, my fiance fell on a knife. Who thinks that way? No one. They don't have a relationship, Sandy and Josh, the parents of Ellen, with him until they found out that he was engaged to another woman, Caroline Schnee, in 2013. They found out through an email. Now, Caroline, and I feel bad for her because she just got married into this, but she is the daughter of a prominent New York real estate magnate, married in a lavish bash at the Plaza. They had a beautiful, I'm sure, very, very, very expensive wedding at the Plaza 3 years after the death of Ellen. And she has spoken about their amazing marriage. She says that he's a star in the kitchen. Isn't that interesting? They live with their 2 children in Manhattan. At the time of Ellen's death, he worked as a features producer for NBC Sports, and now works for Live Golf, so he's still in the golf world. He has never been named a suspect or have been accused of a crime in connection to the death. Part of the medical examiner's review was that there was just a lack of any evidence that they had abuse between them. There was no evidence, minus the 59 bruises. They also said that she suffered from anxiety, and there was a recently changed medication because she had insomnia, and she had an increase in energy to act on her anxious thoughts because of the medication. She also concluded that she could have inflicted those 20 stab wounds on herself, and there was no signs of a struggle or defensive wounds at the scene except for a hematoma at her neck, which there was, which usually means asphyxiation. With all of this information considered, it is the opinion that it is suicide, is what it ended up being. I just feel so bad for her parents, Sandy and Josh. They're fighting the fight. They still have an attorney. They're still going for it. I think this story needs to just keep growing out there. And there's something very shady about this. We're going to keep talking about it here on this channel, so follow for more. I'm going to get more people talking about it. I have a medium coming on my show to get more information on it, plus people that have known Ellen through her life, etc. But there's shady people involved, and it has to do with higher-ups in the police department and in politics and in the legal world. I think a murderer is out there. Someone got away with murder. And I think we need to find justice for Ellen Greenberg.